Well, I'm Brian Foster, and today I am talking about Spiritism. And today we're talking about Through the Mist. We are on chapter 12, which is titled Across the Mist. Before I begin, let's have a short prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for guiding and creating the earth and guiding us from the beginning of earth, beginning of the solar system, the formation of the earth, through all the eras, through when you created humans to be on earth, and how you're guiding our culture and our societies and our nations and civilizations up and down, so we as a collective humanity can grow and someday rise from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration. We know of your love when you were on earth for a short time, but you have been our Father and our leader for billions and billions of years. For that, we thank you with all our love. Amen. So, before I begin with Through the Mist, if you are interested in Spiritism, I suggest you read the Spirits book by Allan Kardec, codified by Allan Kardec, I should say. And that was written in the 1850s. It was in response to in John chapter 14, verses 15 to 17, where he said, I will send you more information, and it be the Spirit of truth. I will send you a consoler. And again, that's in John 14, verse 26. So Allan Kardec created a series of 1,019 questions, and he asked those questions to multiple mediums, and they were answered. He did not codify them in the book unless they were the same or similar. And all the spirits that talked to the different mediums were organized by the Spirit of truth as promised by Christ. This will give you an excellent idea of what heaven is, what reincarnation, the process of heaven, why we're on earth, all sorts of answers to questions that, to me, it was a revelation. To me, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. If you would like to learn about Spiritism more on a outline manner, which I suggest it could help some people before they start reading the Spirits book, that gives you kind of a background context of everything. You may want to download my free PDF, Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation, and you can download that from my blog site, nwspiritism.com. And that's www.nwspiritism.com. And it's in English and in French. You can download it free on PDF. You can also, of course, buy it on Kindle, 99 cents, paperback, or in Audible format. So, let's begin. Let me bring this up. Hide this. There we are. Okay, so what had happened is in the previous chapter, the spirit who wished to be remain nameless, but some people called him Fred. He had watched this woman as she was waking up, and they were trying to calm her down, but they knew that she was still attached materially to earth. They knew as soon as she woke up, she would try and run away and go back to where she was being called on earth. And so at first they were trying to slow down the process, but they knew that the process was almost the end, where she was ready to wake up in her paraspiritual and her spirit body. And so therefore, the spirit, Fred, said, can we follow her? And they said, okay, yes. And now this is the state where they're going to start following her to where she is going on earth. Chapter 12, Across the Mist. For the first time, which was perhaps due to what Simonides had said to me, I realized that we were not walking. In my rapid passage through the air was as pleasant as it was novel, and that's called volitation in Spiritism. That is, you move by the speed of thought. Now, who knows how far heaven is in geometrical in miles, but in fact, you're going through states, not miles, but because we are a very complex piece of data where we are independent, logical, encapsulated personalities, as they call us, and we can go through different areas and see different atmospheres just by changing our thoughts of where we are. I'm sure it's much more complicated than that, but I'm trying to make it so we can look at it as if we are in a simulation or we are playing a video game and our avatar goes from scenery to scenery upon our command, and the avatar appears they are moving, but in reality, it's they are just changing the parameters of where they're at. There was no effort in my flight. In fact, I was not aware of exercising any power of locomotion at all. That's because Kushna, well, here it says, Kushna held my hand and perhaps exerted whatever force was necessary to carry us on our way. And that's exactly what happened. Kushna held his hand and he came with him. Now, when he becomes more experienced, he won't need that. He'll be able to do it himself. But right now, he's being helped. For a considerable time, he did not speak or give the slightest indication that he was conscious of my presence. He was probably focusing on where the woman was going. Our transit certainly was not an instantaneous one. Perhaps I was not yet capable of making such, or it may have been due to other causes. I cannot tell. Probably because he was following the woman, and the woman had not known where she was going exactly. She was following a thought. But when I saw through the mist, only a short distance in front of us, 1,000 questions rushed through my mind, while a thrill of excitement took possession of me. Under my changed conditions, would the earth offer itself as a surprise or not? At what distance would it be? Should I know the first place I sighted? What, if any, of the acquaintances should I see first? Should I see London at all? That London is where he had passed away. We drew close to the mist, but made no sign of descending to pass through them, at which I was somewhat surprised, until I remembered Helen saying that in going back to earth we cross over them. Yes, we were above them. Now for the grand secret from the reverse side of life. What would it be? What would it reveal? Why? We had passed them. It was dark and I was disappointed. I would much rather have crossed in the daylight on my first return. It was so cold, too. I felt the chill pass through me, and for a moment I hesitated to go forward. I had no idea at what distance or in what direction the earth lay. In all the gloom, whether far or near, there was no beacon light to attract my attention. Krishna urged me on for a time, then halting, still in the darkness, asked me playfully what I thought of my view of earth from the immortal side. I have not seen it yet, I replied, nor perceive any sign of it unless these indistinct and confused sounds should arise from it. That is just what I was expecting. You have fallen into the one great error of mankind in misunderstanding the relationship which exists between the physical and spiritual sides of life. This arises from want of thought and forms the greatest stumbling block in the way of communication between ourselves and those left behind. And its discussion opens up the whole of this question. In the body, they fail to grasp the two differences existing between the spiritual and physical conditions. Very erroneously imagine that the level is the superior of the two. They hold that to throw off the bodies to give up all advantages, all powers, and all achievements. Work, progress, and development cease, and the soul becomes visionary and intangible, being incapable of following any of the pursuits for which the earth afforded it every advantage. And he's absolutely right, right? We have this physical centric view of the world, of the universe, of Earth, the solar system, that we are the center of the universe. And if you're not physical, you're somewhat inferior, or you're so ethereal that you cannot feel what you feel physically because you don't have eyesight and senses. And all that is not true. You're actually far superior in your senses and in your mortality and in your health. And you can create with your mind because thought is action in the spirit world. But this is not how we think because, of course, like children, the whole universe revolves around us, right? As you grow up, the whole house was your family, their whole imagination with your house and your family, your school friends. That was the center of the world. Whatever happened outside of that world didn't exist. We are the same here on earth, but we're wrong. Now, see how Krishna explains it, because what he's seeing the dark spiritual attitude of where he's around. But let's see what he says. Death puts down its foot and says to the mighty influences of the mind, this far but no farther. The grave opens its jaws and cries to the swelling ocean of human capability. Here shall thy proud waves be stayed. In the body they are able to attack and overcome difficulties, but we have lost the power of doing so, having laid it down at the grave. Such is the delusion cherished by one section of humanity. Our church friends form another. They suppose, and very correctly so, that if communication was to be open, the stream of revelation would be continued, but they fondly imagine that God has said his last word in that respect. Therefore, they argue that any attempt to break the silence of the tomb is an artifice of the devil to destroy their souls. Now, a little quiet impartial reasoning would soon disturb the foundations of both of these objections and open the door to more light upon the subject. And again, this is a very good point where he says that people think, well, the word of God in the Bible was it. No other words were done. And why would you confine Jesus and God and other high spirits to what was written down thousands of years ago? They have nothing new to say? There's nothing more to learn? Well, we were told there's more to learn by the Spirit's book, by Spiritism as codified by Allan Kardec. And that the Spirit of Truth was sent by Jesus as promised. Because as we advanced, the communication to us, to the human race, can also advance so we can understand and comprehend more of what they're talking about. We're not just going to be static for all of eternity. And how could you confine Jesus to that? Let me carry on. In the first instance, the brain is not the mind, but simply the convenient instrument by which it operates under certain circumstances, meaning the mind is the spirit mind. Your brain is your physical mind, but it's very hampered. It's very limited by what it can do. Although there's a lot in there that later on, as we advance, we'll be able to be telepathy and other wonderful things. It's all there in our brain. We just haven't been able to use it yet. Between the two, there exists an impassable gulf, so deep and dark that the wisest man is not discovered by what means they are connected. To base an assumption upon this ignorance is the height of folly and equivalent to declaring that the violinist is dead because the strings of his violin are broken. The second or church side of the objection is, if possible, the more inconsistent of the two. They worship God as unchangeable, without variableness or shadow of a turning, which knowledge of him is derived from the immutability of his laws. The Bible is interwoven in its warp and its weft with the ministry of angels. The reappearance of Christ after death is the very cornerstone of their faith. Without it would be vain, and yet they deny the possibility of an open communion and declare that this changeless God has changed, or at least this one law has, and that the angelic ministry has ceased. You're quite right, and you're indictments, I said, but I fail to see what connection this has with my not being able to see the earth. That is, if we are within sight of it. Now he's going to learn, because he's not looking at it from the spirit point of view. He's still thinking it should look like the regular earth in the physical point of view. I'll carry on. That which puzzles you is capable of a very simple explanation, and you will then see that the two illustrations are grounded in one truth. Our theological friends do not believe in angel ministry because we are insensible to their sight. And you are also unable to appreciate our present contiguity to earth for the same reason. Why is this? Simply because you've not changed the standpoint of your observation or point of view, and in doing so have become invisible to earth and the physical, while they at the same time become equally imperceptible to your spiritual sense. To yourselves, you are both as real and tangible as ever, meaning to the physical human and to the spirit who has now gotten rid of that second suit, that diving suit that confines you and limits your senses and your sight and your brain power. You're so much smarter in the spiritual world. So you have to look for Earth now as to you a visionary, intangible, and almost immaterial world. And as such, I will point it out why you, as a spiritual being will remain substantial and real. Is this not contrary to all your ideas? So reality is the spirit world. The physical world is this temporary simulation which we go to in order to learn the spirit. And you go to a very short time, 60, 80 years, a little shorter, a little longer. You go there to rip out your primitive emotions to replace them with civilized one. You go here to learn. You're here to learn. You're not here to accumulate huge wealth or command powers or organizations, corporations, or governments. You're here to become a better person. Everything else is dross. Everything else is useless. It's a waste of your time. I'll carry on. Certainly, but most like other people, my ideas were hazy and unsatisfactory. But you thought of us as invisible, immaterial, implacable creatures. I suppose I did, whenever I gave thought to the subject at all. So we are to them generally, and so that they are to us. This is due to the fact that the point of sensation of resistance is different. Now you'll be in a position to understand what has been a mystery. You still continue to be as real and tangible as ever, but everything else is altered. So when you are in the spirit world, you believe you're this tangible being. Let me bring up the picture of the Perispirit, because I believe this is important to understand. So in the physical body, you can see I'm showing up for those people on our Spotify channel. We have the spirit, the Perispirit, which is kind of an ethereal covering, and the body. In the physical life, we are in the physical body. Now, the Perispirit covers our body and connects to every cell of the body. That's why when you die, and only when the Perispirit is removed from the body, does your body start to decay. It has the message, time to decay, not connected to anything now. So you're used to this physical body. When you die, you go over and your Perispirit still looks like your physical body as you left it. If you were 35 years old, you still look 35 years old. That's right after you die. If you're 65, you still look like you're 65. If you're 10, you look like you were 10. Because your Perispirit hasn't had time to modify according to your will. And in your mind, you still look the same. So your Perispirit gives your impression of your body after you left it. Over time, as you learn about the spirit world, your Perispirit, which is your outward representation of your inward spirituality, will begin to look like how you wanted it to look like. So those who are younger when they die and those who are much older when they die, they come together. And, some people like to be in their mid 30s or mid 20s. Some people still like to be 50, 55, be a little bit more distinguished looking. It all depends on what you want to look as you wish. So, but your Perispirit, for all intents and purposes, when you are in the spirit world, you still feel yourself. You can't put your hand through your head, right? That's not going to happen. But you can walk through walls if you think and you know how to do it, because everything is logical and thought is action. And you can change your appearance. You can also change your density. That's why when higher spirits come and go to the lower zones or the dark abyss, which is a type of purgatory, and there's lower spirits there. Remember, lower spirits have a lower ratio of energy to matter, meaning have more matter. Of course, we as physical earth have lots more matter, but they can't see angels either, unless that higher spirit comes and he or she wills themselves to be more dense, and then they can view them. So I just wanted to go over that because I want everybody to understand what is being said by Krishna. Okay, well, let me finish. The spirit world has become the objective and natural, while the earth has changed to the invisible to a great extent. Now, there was a spirit that talked to the Reverend G. Vowell and really gave a good explanation. He said that the physical world is objective. The spirit world is subjective. the heavens, I should say. And then above the heavens is sublime, because they still don't know what's there, but it's something great. So in this objective world, a wall is a wall, right? The color red is the color red. A flower is a flower. You pick it, it dies, it decays. Now, when he says the spirit world has become objective and natural, that is because he's talking to Fred, who just landed there, and he is seeing what he expects to see. And he's being influenced by the thoughts of everybody around him. If he was a higher spirit, he could see through that. He could actually mold the environment to what he wanted it to be, right? Depending on the level of spirit that created the environment. He might have to go somewhere else and create his own little environment, or create his own mansion or house on the environment, which is, it's subjective. But as he's telling them that now to you it's become objective natural because you're there and you're influenced by the thinking all around you. That's why when people say, well, you make your own heaven. Well, no. Only a very advanced, high superior spirits can do that. You don't have the capacity to create your own heaven because you're being bombarded, just like on Earth, you're being bombarded by thoughts. But in the spirit world, you're more in tune with other people's thoughts, and you go where the law of affinity places you with people who think like you. So that's why he's saying that. He says, to you it looks natural because you are you, and when you touch a wall, you touch a wall, because he hasn't learned how to think past that yet. That, and I'll carry on, that which formerly was solid and obstructive to you now is no longer so. Buildings, trees, and even physical bodies of men are no more to us than the purple haze, which wraps itself around the shoulders of a mountain and offers no more resistance. Meaning they can go right through humans and mountains and doors. They can go right through a house. Everybody's seen movies. Ghosts just go right through things. There's nothing there to them. Why Krishna, I grasped as a revelation unfolded itself, and following the motion of his hand, I gradually perceived the visionary outlines of objects surrounding us. This is the greatest surprise of all. How can I understand it? You must be patient, he replied. A student does not understand the language as soon as he has mastered the alphabet, but that does not hinder him from continuing his study if he is wise. No man knows how he is able to think, but every searcher for knowledge is glad to use his brain in spite of the explanation which lies beyond his reach. So we must act in our development. Every successive stage through which we pass will have its mystery, but each in turn will be solved and give place to greater problems. Until all our powers having been unfolded, we shall see God. If our friends on earth would recognize this, they would fulfill their mission better. So, let's see what he says. Does not hinder him from continuing his study. So what he's saying that is, you used to be in the physical world. You were completely physical centric. Who can blame us, right? Everything in our from our birth to our school to what we talk to our friends or family, what we see on TV, what we read in books is the natural world. The universe was created by the Big Bang. The natural world, the earth was evolved over billions of years. There was no other spirits, and we are it, right? There might be aliens and other planets, but they're far away, and it'll take them a long time to get here, and it'll take us a long time to get there. And if you believe in ghosts, you're kind of strange. If you believe in spirituality, you're even stranger, right? That's what culture we live in today. And everyone's affected by that. Who cannot be affected by that? So what it happens is, like Fred, it creates a person that completely thinks all within the box. And the box has little tiny windows, and sometimes you get little hints of other stuff, but you rationalize a way that doesn't exist. Like for me, when I married my wife, and she started telling me things about what would happen or did happen that she had foreseen. And I heard these little things, and I saw out these little windows. But I thought, nah, it's trivial. Or no, she said that after the fact. She just dreamt that. The earth is the earth. I did believe in God, but far away God. But then she told me something that was going to happen, I didn't think it was going to happen at all. I rejected it immediately as I heard it. It did happen a year later, and that opened this big this big window in the little box I was in. I go, I've been locked in this box. I don't know what the heck I've been thinking. And that's when I went on my discovery of what really controls the world. What world do we live on? How can something happen to me and told to me that, and she had this vision when she was like young age, and this is like what, 13, 15 years before we met. And then she's telling me something's going to happen a year from now. And it happens with great specificity. Does that mean there's predetermination? And if there's predetermination, that must mean there's something grander than us that's controlling what's happening and it's involved in all of our lives. You got to get out of that box. Once you really understand and put to heart the fact that we are on this physical world and we are guided lovingly. We all have blueprints and project plans, you can call it whatever you like, that happen to us. We have free will within what happens to our trials and tribulations, but not a lot. You get more free will as you go on higher and higher planets. We are in the kindergarten, elementary school stage because we're on a planet of atonement. And like an elementary school student, the whole world's a school and there's nothing outside the school. And again, for us physically on Earth, and our culture reinforces that all the time. Now, it wasn't always like that. Mankind used to be more spiritual and they understood there was more spirituality. But now we're so rich and we have to have constant gratification and entertainment. We spend little time in this. Now it's time to change. It's time to change. It's time to put a little bit of your daily routine in your increasing your spirituality. Because once you do and you start that path and you start taking it to heart, everything else becomes trivial because now you're out of the box. And what was inside that box, like, oh, not much was inside that box. Mostly false premises and incorrect knowledge. And a lot of people who are inside that box, all they want to do is get things that are unimportant, like power and money and whatever. And once you get outside of that, it's like, okay, that's not that important. Me improving myself and helping others to improve, that is what is important. Now, I understand. You're not going to do this full time. You have to work, you have to live, you got to supply housing and food for your family. You have to balance all this. So let me go on. No man knows how he is able to think, but every searcher for knowledge is glad to use his brain in spite of the explanation that lies beyond his reach. So we must act in our development. Every successive stage through which we pass will have its mystery, but each in turn will be solved and give place to greater problems until all our powers have been unfolded. We shall see God. If our friends on earth would recognize this, they would fulfill their mission better. And then he says, Fred says, I can begin to see now the difficulty of reaching them, but is it not possible to do something to correct these errors? Because Fred has always wanted to. As soon as he got to heaven, he goes, I want to go back and tell everybody about this. And they said, wait, it's harder than you think. Everyone has their preconceived ideas, and they're going to think you're an evil spirit if you try to tell them anything differently. So then Krishna says, yes, love conquers death, and that one great law which governs and controls everything with us is also the means by which we may reach and save mankind. Sympathy, whether pure or impure, base or noble, holy or unholy, has a natural attraction for that which is like itself, and its power is not destroyed by the grave, as you have seen in the cause of our present mission. Love links soul with soul and has the power to bridge any gulf if it is only strong and true. this is partially admitted on earth. For instance, it is allowed that a mother who is with us may be cognizant of the continued welfare of her child. Then why should they deny the possibility of information being carried the other way? The experiences of the child cannot be of any assistance to the mother, but those of the parent would make an inestimable difference to the child. Why then should the useless knowledge be ordained, and that which would be helpful denied? Is this the usual method of God's procedure? The telegraph wire will carry a message equally well in both directions. Why then, if love can pierce the mist from the earth and cry, "Come back," should it not be able to travel with equal force the other way and cry, "Come forward"? Still, there are difficulties in the way. Yes, is what Krishna said to what Fred said. Yes, but by no means insurmountable, because not natural. They arise entirely from the misconception I have referred to. Give us on the earth side a base of operations which would exist if simple teachings of Jesus were followed, and the rest would be very easily accomplished. And then Fred said, I rather wish I had first returned by daylight. I think the darkness causes me more confusion than I should otherwise experience. Another mistake, my companion replied with evident amusement. You are not able to grasp the full situation. Everything you see that is real is spiritual, but things are not quite so black as they naturally appear in contrast to the shadowless life you have grown accustomed to lately. There are signs of daybreak all around us, and there is no doubt that the sun is rising. You mean the spiritual sun? Yes, the sun of righteousness, which will chase away the night of selfishness, ignorance, bigotry, and superstition, and establish on earth peace and goodwill to man. So before I go on, this again is seconded by Spiritist writings. In the books by Francisco Chico Xavier, great books, and the first book, No Solar, and some of the other books that were kind of the Andre Luis series of books. Andre Luis comes to Earth, and he comes to Rio de Janeiro, and he sees all this black clouds. He goes to like a bus, and he sees everyone surrounded by black clouds. He goes to the metro, he sees everyone surrounded by black clouds. He sees people on the sidewalk, and there's just masses of black moving back and forth. And those are people preoccupied with their life, thinking base thoughts, not spiritually high spiritual thoughts. And of course, every so often you'll see kind of a brighter light. Oh, because spirits see who you are on the inside. And as your perispirit will then eventually reflect who you are on the inside, on the outside. And unfortunately, the same is true for those in the lower zone and the dark abyss, which is also called purgatory. That's why when people see spirits from those positions, they look, some of them look gross and ugly. Some like wolves, some like other types of monsters, because that's who they were on the inside. Whereas in the physical life, a person can be just a beautiful, handsome, gorgeous person, and yet on the inside, they're horrible. And we've all seen that. In fact, what they say is one spirit said he was watching this one woman go to sleep. She was a very beautiful woman. She went to sleep, and out of her came this horrible looking woman, because that's who she was in reality. Okay, I'll carry on. What does the cold, keen air indicate? And the answer is the degree of charity registered by the spiritual thermometer. So, meaning not much. Look at that shadow moving, Krishna. What is it? A man in whom there is no spirituality. Therefore, we see him as a dark shadow. As one becomes more Christ-like, the body becomes illuminated with the lambent glory, which corresponds to the shadowless light of paradise. Is that always so? Always. The amount and quality of light radiating from a man declares his real condition. We do not need to be told. It is impossible to deceive us, because it is impossible to tamper with the witness. So, therefore, spirits who are low spirits, they know who to influence. They know who to play with. They play with spirits on their level. dark spirits. If you are a person who is full of love, studies spirituality, spiritism, whatever is good, whatever study to the good that you can. Lower spirits will go on, just like bullies at school. If you don't notice them or they say you don't, react to what they want, they'll just ignore you. Same thing with lower spirits. They'll go, I'm not going to waste my time on that person. That's why they're drawn to the dark spirits, because they are at their level. What a flood of light the simple incident threw upon a whole host of Bible passages, which rushed through my mind with the rapidity of thought. The prophecy of Isaiah, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. The postulate of St. John, that the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. And the terribly clear declaration of the Savior, this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil. Then there involuntarily passed through my mind the other words which gave emphasis to the vivid illustration afforded me by his remarks. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. What another revelation was here opened up before me of that awful sublimity and reality of life. And again, this is why I do short YouTube videos as I go through and I interpret the Bible in light of Spiritism. Right now I'm doing the New Testament. Because these words, they mean so much more than how we read them. Because when he said, St. John, the light shineth in the darkness. Well, that's the light of an internal good spirit. And the darkness are the immature spirits all around. And the immature spirits cannot help but notice if they're at the, if the higher spirit allows it so, to notice that high spirit because they shine brightly. Now, most high spirits won't shine brightly in a sea of darker, inferior spirits. First of all, they don't want to frighten people. And the higher spirits go to great length to be humble and not to lord over others of what they have done and the level that they are. So you won't see that much. It happens if they have to happen sometimes, but mostly you won't see that. Okay, I'll carry on. My companion did not leave me for long to think over these things before he recalled to my mind the particular reason of our visit and indicated a wish to turn attention in that direction. As I followed him, my eyes became more accustomed to the twilight in which we were moving, and though everything still remained indistinct and shadowy, I was enabled to trace their outlines better and understand what it was we were passing. So that's the end of chapter 12. And again, this is just another wonderful revelation. And it gives you the other side of the mirror, right? We've all seen movies and CGI, right, where people reach their hand through the mirror, or the people on the other side look at us, and it's just a whole different world there. That's us. We are on that other side of the mirror. We are actually in the fantasy world. We're in the world that's like we go to a summer camp for 2 weeks when we were young, right? We're in this fake universe. And you go back to the reality of our parents, and we have to do chores and stuff, right? This, what we are in now, is a temporary world made for one reason: for us to be in these diving suits, like a horse with blinders. So we're not in this comfortable situation for those who came from heaven, where we are going to be exposed to emotions waving over us constantly. And we're going to be involved in trials and tribulations that are going to make us think carefully of what we've done in the past, even though we don't know what we've done in the past. That's one great thing people always ask me: how can I How can I better myself if I don't know what I did wrong in the past? I need to know my past lives. No, you don't. You are underestimating the genius of the spirit world. If you are married or engaged or have a significant other, and that other treats you like dirt and betrays you and does all these type of things, takes all your money, whatever, I can pretty well guarantee you did that to somebody else in a previous life. And now, so if that happens to you, instead of saying, I want revenge on everyone because of that, no, you need to think like, oh, I must have done that. Now I know how it feels. I will never do that to anybody else. It feels horrible. It hurt me to the base of my soul. And I will never subject that feeling to another human being. That is what you need to do. If someone steals your car, you go, oh, that, you know what? Stole my car. I hate him. But then again, think, when my car was stolen, that felt terrible. I would never steal another person's car. I won't hurt people like that. Because most probably you stole something. Maybe you stole a horse back then. So, yeah, I mean, you don't need to know what you did wrong. You'll be shown quite plainly if you only open your eyes and examine the trials and tribulations. If you examine the trials and tribulations you have to go through, you'll know pretty well what type of person you were. I lost money a couple of times. I now understand that I'm never going to be rich. I'm lucky to be middle class. And I say I'm lucky to be middle class because what I was told in mediums meeting is that I've been in positions of power, and instead of being helpful to the people who were dependent on me, I took money from them. And as such, now I don't, now, because when I lost money a couple of times, and it wasn't through drunken spouts or drugs or anything like that. I thought they were good investments. And of course they were not. I was stupid, but I think I was led down that path to be stupid. And I just beat myself up. I was so mad. I lost everything. I was so stupid. My depression. Oh, but then I learned, okay, I can survive. I'll just keep working. Right. And then when I discovered Spiritism, I go, I had to go through that. And especially when I've been told in mediums meetings by messages, I'm not a medium, but messages sent to me from spirit world saying, it implied like, yeah, you haven't been a good person. So therefore, you're going to go through some trials. So yes. So those things, that's how you learn. That's why you don't need past life regression. And these people have past life regressions. I think it's helpful for a lot of people. But you also just see the surface. You'll see images and visions. They won't give you the full story. I mean, what you really want is the people who've had near-death experiences, and they sit at a table, and they're able to come back right after that. They sit at a table, and they discuss what they did wrong and right in this life, and they go, how can you improve? And in fact, uniformly, people with near-death experiences talk about their life review, so to state, with a group of spirits. And these people always say these spirits are familiar, but I don't quite not know who. And that's because they're still kind of fuzzy coming from the physical life, but they're probably really good friends in the spirit world. And when they go back permanently, right, they'll know who they were. But they said, these are like, they're so nice to me. And, they'll point out things, but there's no blame and there's no, like making me embarrassed, which, if we think about our lives, we have a great right to be embarrassed by many things we have done. No doubt about that. But the reason they don't embarrass you is like you don't embarrass a kid who's done something stupid because you've done something stupid and probably even stupider. You understand. You love that child, even though everything they do is like the wrong choice, right? And as one set of spirits said, this one guy kept saying, no, stop. I want to see exactly what I did wrong. And I said, no, that's unimportant. And because they know life is about being here and learning. That is what is important. The only thing that's important is that you learn to become a better person. There's no life review I've ever heard of in NDEs or in spiritualist literature saying, you did a great job. You made $1,000,000 or $1,000,000,000 and you had a big yacht. Wow, you're going to be special in heaven. No, never. In fact, you read about the captains of industry or politicians who were not exactly uncorrupt or either in the lower zone or the dark abyss. And if they make it to heaven, they're taking instructions from people who may have been, a simple janitor or manual labor or farm labor or whatever you want, plumber, which, and they could be the most intelligent, wonderful person alive when they were doing that. And they deliberately wanted to stay humble so they could learn what they wanted to learn. That's why you don't you don't you don't put down anybody because they can be vastly superior to you. And that's why I just look at, people think, I'm sure everybody's superior to me. So that's why you have to change your attitude and your outlook. Is if you can start looking at yourself from the point of view of being in the spirit world and looking at yourself like, okay, I'm going through this game. I'm making mistakes. And, I wish I could restart over, but I can't. I have to finish this game. But you'll be able to play a game another time because you'll be back on Earth or some other planet. I can guarantee it because we're not that high yet. As you go higher and higher, you don't have to reincarnate at a certain state of purity. You may incarnate again on a mission to help whatever planet you're going to. But as you go higher, you don't have to worry about that. But at our level, you're going to incarnate again. You don't have to. You can stay in heaven or wherever you want, or actually in heaven. If you're in the lower zone or the dark abyss, you have no choice. They'll send you back and give you your life plan. You have, most of the time, you have no input. But when you're in heaven, you have input. You help create your own life plan. So these are the things. So if you look at yourself like, okay, I kind of failed that test. I didn't open that door and find gold. I opened that door and found problems, right? I was too selfish. So there's a key to play this game correctly. And the key to play this game correctly is you're given the rules of the game in your mind, in your conscience. But as most of us, as we are young, we become really efficient at ignoring or rationalizing away our conscience, meaning we ignore the rules of the game because we try to listen to other people's interpretation of the rules of the game. I mean, step over other people, become as rich as possible, grab what you can. Those aren't the rules. Those are other people's rules, and they fail. I don't want anybody here to fail. So follow the rules of the game. Filter every idea you have through your conscience. If it feels good and you feel relaxed, it's the right move. If you feel nervous about that or you feel regretful, and something in this pit of your stomach that says, no, don't do that. And when you do something wrong, just learn from it. No one expects you to go through life being perfect, being kind and personable to everybody. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be difficult and trying. I know I've been. Lose your temper, but just try and be better over time. That's all that is asked of you. You don't have to be a saint. You don't have to wear a hair shirt. You can still drive a nice car and live in a nice house. Just don't take advantage of people in order to do that. So anyway, if you're interested in Spiritism more and really want to understand what is in heaven, what you are working for, because you're working for something marvelous. The higher in heaven, the more power and attributes you have. Read my series of 3 books. Book 1 is Heaven and Below, which I talk about heaven. I talk about the lower zone, the dark abyss, and Jesus Christ. Then book 2, which I think is extremely interesting to many people, is Spirits in the Spirit Universe. What are you as a spirit? What capabilities do you have as a spirit? How do you rise as a spirit? What happens when you rise as a spirit? All these things are important. And then my third book is How We Are Guided by Spirits, book 3 of Spiritism. What your guardian angel does for you, what other spirits will do for you, what is planned for you eventually, what is planned for different countries and races and empires, organizations, what's planned for the earth, where the earth's going to be eventually. So all of these things I talk about. And I believe, and I'm not trying to convince anybody or anything, I'm just trying to lay information in front of you so you can make your own opinion and decide what is real and not real, because that's the first leap. Do you stay in the box or you get out of the box? And this explains, a lot of things that's happening. I know many people say, well, there's this whole group of you're on earth because you're being punished, and there's this group that drain pleasure from you, and they keep you on earth and make you uncomfortable all the time. I'm just paraphrasing these things. Well, no, but there are groups, the lower spirits, who love being around you, giving you stupid ideas and feed off your mistakes and your feelings. That part's true, but you have the power to ignore them. Jesus and God wants us to be successful, but they know we have to go through hard lessons. Tough love. I'll leave you at that. Now, I want to say, everyone, thank you for being here, and I will come back and I live stream on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.